in the sky, gazing far into the night. I raise my hand to the fire, but it's no use, 'cause you can't stop it from shining through. It's true, baby, let the light shine through. If you believe it's true, baby, won't you let the light shine through for you. In the sky, gazing far into the night. I raise my hand to the fire, but it's no use, 'cause you can't stop it from shining through. It's true, baby, let the light shine through. If you believe it's true, baby, won't you let the light shine through for you.
Good evening, guys and girls. We are live. It's Monday night. We're digesting everything that happened in Gameweek 3. We're going to get some callers on later on today. We're going to be looking at our community team and how that fared. Good evening, Steve-O. How are you doing?
Hello, Jason. Yeah, all good. All nice to be just calm and settled. I don't need to talk about Burnley. I don't need to talk about Man United and Aaron Wan-Bissaka. I can just be calm and talk about our mini leagues.
Talk about our mini leagues and how people are doing in our mini leagues. We've got some hotshot, high-flying FPL managers at the moment that are making us look bad, Steve-O.
Well, when you've got people like Dereco and Cy Bellamy that are literally in the top 20 in the world, in fact, Dereco 9th, Yeah, well,
yeah, it's pretty crazy. Hello to everybody in chat. We've got Marco Hodzik in chat, Rory Husby, we've got Huncho in chat, Basker Bora, Simeon Batchelor, Charlie Reed, Cameron Rawcliffe, FPL Penguin. Welcome, FPL Penguin. Big on Instagram, guys. Go hit him up with a follow. We got Greasy Trumpet, Cameron Rudge, we've got Dino Bino FM, we got Craigan Moodley in chat, FPL Boona, G Wiz, we got Brew in chat. I'm sure he just said that he's 35,000 feet up in the air. I'm not sure how he's got internet up at 35,000 feet. Do planes have internet? Every time I've tried connecting to the internet, it's never worked for me. Folo Derolo's in chat. We've got Anurag as well in chat there. Steiny Stein, Nasty Balls, Toby Powell. We've got Rory Keenan, Taffy Mushosi. Apologies if I'm saying your names wrong, guys. Blue in chat. Rakesh Saha says, hi, cutie Stevo. There you go. Got a fan there, Stevo, straight off the bat. Khalil Mokadems in chat. And many, many more of you guys. Amanda Dillon, welcome. Hope you've had a great bank holiday weekend, guys. You can get Wi-Fi on planes nowadays. I know you can get Wi-Fi, but it's just never been reliable. Every time I've bought Wi-Fi on a plane, it just never works. Maybe I've just been flying in low-class airlines. Steve-O, so, hey, Greasy. Let's talk about the community team. Let's kick off. I've got the community team on the screen in front of me now. All in all, a very good week.
Yeah, just to let you guys know, you're doing really, really well with this particular community team. And we will be putting up a poll maybe after the Tonight Show, maybe tomorrow, regarding if you want to do a transfer for this particular team, or do you want a wild card? I mean, there's so many different options for this specific community team that you can go for. So, yeah, I'm sure Jason can put up a poll, maybe do it live now, who knows, and just to see if you guys either want to do a free transfer, roll it over to the following week, or even maybe hit the wild card. But to be honest with you, no, I'm not going to give any advice. But, you're specifically doing this particular team to represent the Elite FPL, not just for the overall rank, but also for this particular mini league that we were invited to, entitled Extremes of Stupidity and Genius. Now, I apologise, I haven't actually. We're unable to bring up that specific mini league on the screen, but what I can tell you is that you guys are fourth, and it's out of 18 particular teams. And you're only 18 points off top spot. That it is pretty tight between first and seventh within this particular mini league. But yeah, you guys are doing absolutely fantastic. You're on 192 points. You're 203,000th in the world. And like I said, it's a solid team. For people listening on audio, it's Nick Pope in goal, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Zinchenko, Wan-Bissaka, Digne, Salah, Sterling, Perez, Martial, Callum Wilson, and Pookie. And I'm sure that people probably... I reckon they'll... What do you reckon, Jason? Do you reckon they'll want to do a free transfer or roll it over?
I think there's going to be people wanting to bring Mason Mount in for Perez. But I think save it for the international break. Save that transfer. It's no fires to put out in that team. And Perez, come on, he's got to get on the score sheet at some point, right, guys? But yeah, that's there's a poll. I've just put a poll up in Discord right now. You can go into Discord if you're not a member of our Discord at the moment. ! Discord in the stream chat will give you the link. It's also in the description box of the video. Join our Discord, guys. Be a part of it. Be a part of the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, tonight's show is about the Cash Mini League top 4 places and the free Elite FPL Mini League that you can participate in. The code for that specific lead is on the stream. And but more importantly, if you want to come, we want to get the people that are in those top 4 places live on air, because it'd be fascinating to hear. I know Dereko's there. He's in chat. I know that. We'd love to get you live on air to discuss the fact that you're number 1 in the free Elite FPL Mini League, let alone being 9th in the overall ranking. We want to get you live on there. We want to talk to you guys. about your particular teams. And of course, Jason will be monitoring the. I mean, I'm monitoring the chat, but Jason will be able to pick out some key talking points that you guys are talking about. And straight away, we've got Greasy Trumpet that's just sent in a donation of 35 ZAR. Rand, is it?
Rand, yeah. 35 South African Rand.
Just that's quite literally quoting the wonderful intro music that Jason chose for our particular stream. It is pretty much our theme song.
It's the Elite FPL anthem.
Yes, absolutely.
It's absolutely the Elite FPL anthem. Thank you. That's very generous of you, Greasy Trumpet. It's crazy. With the exchange rate at the moment, we very much appreciate it, because it's not very favourable to our friends in South Africa at the moment. But yes, if we can get on the top managers in both the Cash and Community League, then that'll be great. We've got we'll start with the Cash, the Elite FPL Challenge League. This is the league. It means Steve-O are really like focusing out to try and breaking into that top 4, which is looking exceedingly difficult. Currently at the top, we've got Marlon Moore. And Marlon Moore, with his team Double M, he played his wild card, and he's on 75 points. He got 75 points for game week 3, with a quite impressive team, to be fair. He's got Mason Mount in. He got the points of Mason Mount. He captained Salah. That's where a lot of his points came from. And he had Heaton in goal. So unlike a lot of us that didn't get any points from our back line, he's actually got a few back points there, with only Wan-Bissaka getting him 0. So yeah, he's done really well. 75 points. That's an amazing score this week. He's got the heavy hitters of De Bruyne, Sterling, Salah in there, with the lone striker of Pukki. Now, Steve, what do you think about that lone striker position?
He's actually got Ashley Barnes, but he's on the bench.
Oh, let me have a look. I haven't scrolled down to the bench. Yeah, of course, he has got Ashley Barnes. So yeah, he's pretty much set up then, isn't he?
Although the question is, though, he's going to have difficulty with who he's going to be benching. I mean, the only standout
Lamella
issue with his team is Lamella.
Yeah,
it's the only one that I see. But who am I to judge someone that's 125th in the whole world?
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, he could even. I mean, dare I say it? I mean, I'm gonna probably have the wrath of the whole FPL community come on me now. But he could even bench Pukki for that awkward. Probably won't. He probably won't know. Yeah,
absolutely. Moving on to second place, we've got Wayne Hanley. He is he's 6 point. No,
he's at home to City game week 5. I thought they were City for game week. He's not at home to City next week. It's game week 5. So yeah, he would play Pukki next week away at West Ham. But it's the Man City at home. Possibly he would play Barnes over. But it's the Lamella's the standout one that you'd rotate him with.
Yeah, absolutely. And then moving on to second spot, 10 points off top. It's Wayne Hanley. Show me the Mane FC. 61 points. He's already used his triple captain. He's 869th in the world, and he's 6 points ahead of third spot. And again, it's a very, very nice team. Although, again, surprise picks in Bernard, Mopai, even though Mopai is a perfectly good player and everything. But yeah, again, a very, very solid team. But what are your thoughts on double United defence, Jason? In fact, he's got double United and double Liverpool. And he didn't even play Van Dijk this week.
I'm not a fan of Bernard. I'm looking at a team, not a fan of Mopai and Bernard. I mean, I've seen stronger teams than that, and he got the double United defence. I'm quite happy if he stays with that group of players, to be fair, because I'll be thinking I could catch him.
No, absolutely, yeah. And then moving on to Mika Haju with their team MC Gangster Daddy, 3 points off. What am I doing here? 6 points off second spot, and yeah, and another player, but they've used a wild card and a triple captain. They're 2,208th in the world. This is their wild card team. For people listening on audio, it's Nick Pope, Alexander-Arnold, Emerson, Dina Montoya, De Bruyne, Mane, Sterling, Martial, Pukki, Allaire, and then on the bench we got Ceballos, Lundstrom, and Greenwood.
Did you say he's played triple captain? You say
he's already played his triple captain.
Wow, yeah. Well, see, this is the thing. You know, quite a few people at the top at the moment have used some of their chips, and you know, it's only time will tell whether or not it's paid off for them. Who did he triple captain? Let me have a go back through the game weeks.
It's got to be Salah. It was Salah.
Game week 1, Salah. So yeah, a decent return game week 1. So yeah, 87, 80, and 62. So, I mean, I say decent return. I got similar points to him. So yeah, he's used his triple captainship and wild card. Quite confident that people like myself who've still got 3 chips remaining can catch him.
Absolutely.
No, I like the Hauler pick. I really do. I think Hauler could be a really good pick, or Allaire, I should say, going forward. The fixtures are really nice. It's Norwich at home next, Aston Villa away. You'd think he could do something in those games. Man United at home isn't exactly a hard fixture anymore.
You've just mentioned Norwich are away at West Ham next, and you then mentioned the fact that Pukki's up against City next. There, I don't know what it is, but this is going to sound absolutely ludicrous. I'm fully aware of this, everybody, but I can just see Pukki scoring in every single game. The way they play, the way they set up.
Well, they just attack.
Yeah.
They can't. The defense is awful. I mean, but their attack is sublime, and Pukki doesn't need that many chances to put chances away. You know, so he's quite a prolific goal scorer. So it's I think if it was with that, if it was Lamella or Pukki to switch to Barnes, it would definitely be Lamella. Going back to the previous team. I don't think Pukki's going to be on anyone's benches anytime soon.
No.
Decent team in McGangster Daddy there, Mika. You're going to move on to the
Oz Lids, managed by Andrew
place.
Fong. He's pretty much joint 4th, but officially he is 4th. With Armand Dillon is the guy in 5th.
No chips played.
Yeah, no chips played whatsoever. 3,670th in the world, and just like Cy Bellamy, and we'll come on to him in a minute. Just a fantastic team. Just absolutely superb. For people listening on audio, it's Nick Pope, Digne, Robertson, Alexander-Arnold, Zinchenko, Sterling, De Bruyne, Trossard, Salah, he captained this week, Josh King, and Pukki up front. Absolutely. So, and it's people like this that now can take advantage of the people ahead of them that have used their chips already.
Definitely. And it's still very early days, and ranks are going to swing. Pretty much anyone that's within the top 100,000 could find themselves well within the top 10,000 if they have a good week, game week 4. So because the scores are so close to each other at the moment, it's great that we're seeing Elite FPL community members rising up into the top 100 and into the top 20 and into the top 10. That's pretty crazy, and we're looking forward to just seeing how if they can keep up the momentum, really, especially Cy Bellamy. I think the pressure may get to Cy. I think he's thinking about it every second of the day at the moment. The weight of the world's on him at the moment.
I don't blame him. But
he actually. I want to quickly say about Cy Bellamy. What was he, 16th at the moment?
Yes, yeah.
He was actually saying he was contemplating hitting the triple captaincy chip this coming on Sterling, just so he could get the manager of the month, the top. Is it the top manager of the month prize or something like that for the goodie bag?
Yes, yeah. So, something along those lines.
I didn't think it would be worth it. You got to play for the long run, especially after such a good start.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, talking of good starts, you're only 6 points off 4th spot, doing very well this season. I've got to say, Jason, just plying along basically, aren't you?
I'm trying to stay under the radar, Steve. It's just after a disappointing start to game week 3, I thought all was lost. But fortunately, the Sterling did get a return. Obviously, it would have been nice if I had captain Salah. Pukki again with a return, but I don't really own anyone that's mean, other than Ceballos, I mean, I don't really own anyone that's like a low ownership in my front. Well, I'm Rashford, but don't even want to count Rashford because he didn't do anything. But yeah, the thing is, going forward, I mean, I was very fortunate this past week that the main threats to me, I'm talking about like Kane, for example, or Mane, the main threats didn't return. Because I've not had a great week at 55 points, -4, 51 points, pretty average really. I wanted to hit 60, but you can't get it always. I'm just happy to just stay kind of under the radar, and I've made my transfer this week, so I'm kind of relaxed now. I've made my goalkeeper transfer, Ryan to Heaton, pretty relaxed. Don't have to think about my team at all. I'm hoping that no one gets injured, and I've got my teams all set up for game week 4, so I'm chill, pretty chill.
And I mean, we were talking about former number 1 yesterday, Ian Rose. He's used 3 chips already this season, bench boost, wildcard, triple captain, and you haven't used any, and you're only a point behind him.
It's great. Yeah, he was top, wasn't he, last week? So it just goes to show that it goes to show that ranks can swing. He triple captained. He triple captained Mane, and he's got to be sick. He's got to be sick about that. He really has. I mean, it's, but especially when Salah got the points he got, 15 points, could have triple captained Salah. I'm sure he must have had Salah, and he probably would have transferred Salah out at some point, probably in a wild card. But it's just very unfortunate on his behalf, really, that that's happened. But it's my game. His loss is my gain. At the end of the day, we're all rivals here, and it's just the way it is. Good luck, Ian. I'm coming for you, buddy, if you're watching. So that's the cash league. Very competitive at the top. There's not many points separating the top 10 really at all. Should we move into the community league?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, everybody's going to be fascinated by this, and we could clickbait if we really wanted to, but we're not going to because we're not all about that. But yeah, he said that he try and get on the stream. It's friend of the show. It's Dereco, 9th. I alliterate that point. 9th overall in the world, and I mean, admittedly, he's used triple captain, free hit, and this week was his wild card. And I just find it. I honestly, it's like with Cy Bellamy, and we'll come on to him in a minute. I can't get my head around. Like, this is legitimately what dreams are made of. Like, when you first start playing fantasy football, you're like, oh, I could win it. You never think that you're going to get anywhere near the top, especially when you're veterans like you and I. And for people like Dereco and Cy Bellamy being in the top 20, or in this case, top 10 in the world now, I can't get my head around it, mate.
It's a very, very, very rare position to find yourself in any time during the year. And when I was in I know it's very similar, but when I was in the top 100, I felt the weight, the pressure on to try and make the right decision, and in the end, I just thought, go a bit cavalier and do a crazy point hit. But at the end of the day, if you play it safe, you don't make rash decisions, then you can easily maintain that real high position in the not only just in the top 1,000, but in that top 100. So a great start.
Yeah, and Dereco's wildcard team, if anybody's thinking of just hitting the wildcard button and copying the 9th ranked team, it's Patrizio in goal, Montoya, Wan-Bissaka, a total of 0 there, Digne with 1 point, and then Mahrez, Sterling, Martial, De Bruyne, and then a front 3 of Pukki, Firmino, and Allaire.
But we need to say that this team, 9th in the world, has not got Mohamed Salah in it.
Yes. Yeah.
So, and I don't believe.
In fact, I'll tell you what, Dereco's there now. We may as well get him in. Let's get Dereco in.
Let's get him in.
In now.
Dereco, you're live on the Monday night call-in. How you doing, buddy? Your mic's muted, Dereco. Do you want to?
I'm muted. Sorry.
Yeah, ninth in the world. No Mo Salah in your team. No Mane after you've wildcarded. What's the plan with that then? What's the thought process? Just sticking with Firmino, was it?
So Firmino was my Liverpool cover, and I thought he got an assist in that game. To be honest, when he set off Salah, I thought he got an assist for some reason, but apparently didn't.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I went for Mahrez as well. I put my chips on the red on the pep roulette, and I landed on black, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I really thought he might have a chance to start it because he started the first game, then Silva started the second. I thought maybe third thing will start it. Mahrez.
You've got to be like seriously now thinking like, what's your next move? I mean ninth in the world.
Before we get into that, let's just go back a bit. In all seriousness, let's go back a couple of weeks ago where you were in game week 2 on, was it Saturday evening? You were number 1 in the whole world, is that right?
Yeah.
Tell us what you were feeling then. You must have been, your stomach must be going round like a roller coaster.
Honestly, it's weird. I didn't feel any different, and I think it might be shock, or I just didn't have any like weird feeling towards it. After I hit triple captain in game week 1 and got 121 points with Sterling triple captain, my thoughts were I'm going for manager of the month even then, and I was texting my mates and everything because I got a community league with my friends. Mm-hmm. Obviously, my other account is in that league. Unfortunately, this account is in no leagues, which is upsetting. Other than obviously the community league in with Elite FPL. But no cash leagues is what I meant to say.
Yeah.
And my intentions are to go for first in manager of the month. And that's why I'm using all my chips now with no long-term thoughts, really.
When you say, can I just clarify, when you say manager of the month, are you referring to our manager of the month?
No, the FPL manager of the month. Like top in the game. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you get FIFA for free pretty much, and you get a Bluetooth speaker and a tablet computer, whatever that means.
You get a goodie bag, don't you?
Yeah, so I mean, I might as well go for it. I'm probably not going to get it because the people, the guy that's at first, I think he's like 20 or 30 points ahead of me.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, that's unfortunate, but I'm going to use all my chips and try to get first.
So you're going to be playing bench boost next week?
Yeah.
Wow.
I didn't want to talk about it too much because obviously. Side Bellamy, is it? He's in
yes.
it.
Yeah,
well, so.
But Sai's playing the long game. Dereco.
Oh, is he? Yeah, because this is his main account. Yeah, I don't blame him.
Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah. We just.
Yeah, that's smart from him if he does play the long game, obviously.
But that comment sounded as if we were as if it was being dismissed. I mean, whether you're playing the long game or the short game, being 16th in the bloody world is absolutely. Oh, there we are, swear word. In the world.
I think.
Are you?
Yeah, I think what he's done is more impressive.
Just be mindful that about you talking about your second account because it is against the terms of service and there's a few hundred people listening in. Yeah. You shouldn't be doing duplicate. You shouldn't have more than one account. If you read the terms and conditions, they can suspend you for it. So just don't go shout. I mean, I no idea, mate. Whatever you choose to do is up to you. But that's nothing to do with me. But just be mindful of that.
I'm only going to start playing on one account.
Well, there you go. I am just giving you a warning there. But yeah, that's crazy. And if you can get points on the bench boost, then best of luck to you, my friend. You got to try and hit. You got to try and hit that number 1 spot for the end of the month.
So you're 9th overall now. Seriously, are you still just thinking, I just want to win manager of the month and that's it, or are you just thinking, I am going to try and win this actual game?
Nah, I don't think I'll win it, to be honest. So I'm just going to go for manager of the month. If I don't, my main concern is obviously my main account because I've got an opportunity to win actual money in that. I'm in my cash league with my mates. I'm first in that, and obviously I'm not doing as well in Elite FPL cash league. So yeah, that's my main account. So that's the one I'm going to concentrate on.
Yeah, let me do you a favor, right? Stop talking about the fact you've got more than one account first and foremost. We don't want to know about that, and it's just reminding everyone else that you got more than one. But yeah, let's just say best of luck to you, my friend, and hopefully your bench boost works out for you. Whether or not I don't think you're going to be able to survive long term because you've used all your chips.
Exactly.
And it's not the optimal place to use them. So Yeah, it's you got to shoot for gold. That's best of luck to you.
Try my best.
Before we let you go, Dereco, with this, you're going to be playing bench boost. Are you going to be doing any transfers for game week 4? Or is this going to be your team for that bench boost?
So Martial's injured, and I don't know how long that's for. I don't know if it's just he'll be back next game or if it's going to be a couple weeks.
Wait for the
So I'm going to have to see. Yeah, I'm going to have to see. Mm-hmm. Hopefully, I mean, I don't know who I'd bring in for him. I'm going to have to research and see, but
it's got to be Mason Mount, isn't it?
We'll see, innit?
Okay. Dereco, it's your team, innit? You've got to have someone in your team. It's either him or Abraham, and your striker positions are pretty much filled up. So, yeah, I mean, best of luck to you, buddy. We're rooting for you, dude.
Yeah, guys, listen, the streams are amazing. Keep it going, man. It's growing so fast, and it's just gonna keep growing. Just keep it up, yeah.
Thank you.
Honestly, it's so unique. It's crazy.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna be completely honest with you. I basically can't watch anything other than the replays of this, and that's not a joke. I'm being absolutely serious because, as you can imagine, when you're kind of hosting the show, it's going to sound really weird, but you're intaking so much information that I'm not really listening to what you're saying. I just pick up tidbits here and there. So when I listen to it on the replay for research purposes only, I just find it absolutely fantastic. I mean, again, me and Jason had a conversation just briefly after the stream last night, and he was apologising about the way he was on Saturday, and I said to him that, it didn't come across great, but when I listened to on the replay, Jason's true emotion, it was just stunning. It was legitimately really, really good listening. Yesterday, of course, with my rant regarding Burnley, and of course the celebration of getting the specific super chats, just taking shots. It's just real emotion coming from two blokes that are just in a kitchen and a front room chatting with people from across the world, or in your case down the road. But the point being is that I think it's just absolutely fantastic audio.
Yeah, special, man. Special, definitely.
Thank you, Dereco.
And at the end of the day, it's down to people like yourself, Dereco, that support the show. And for everybody that's watching now, thank you so much for supporting the show. It's quite simple, really. And the more you spread the word, the more bigger we're going to get. It's quite simple, really.
It's the snowball. The snowball's rolling, guys. And the more people get involved, the more people that like our videos, the more people that share us out on Twitter, which you guys are doing. When we started doing this 9 months ago, we never used to get retweets. We never used to get shout-outs. We never used to get people on it. Now, it's happening. It's starting to snowball.
What we used to get was people telling us basically, these are rubbish. Your audio's rubbish. Your visual isn't that great and everything. And all we kept replying to was, this isn't for the mainstream audience. This is specifically for our Facebook mini league group.
Yeah.
Without actually realising the naivety of that comment. And then fast forward 8-9 months, and it's quite literally broadcasting now to 200 people enjoying the journey of what we're creating with this specific cash mini league. It's crazy. And then we've got people like yourself, Cy Bellamy, in the top 20 in the world. It's just extraordinary.
I mean, this is entertainment. When you look at it from big picture, it's entertainment. So what matters more than the quality of the audio or the picture?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No. What matters more? Yeah.
Yeah. Is the personalities behind it. The companies pay millions for the personalities, and the equipment comes naturally. So don't worry about the equipment and what people say. It's you guys that we're here for. What you have to say, your interaction with us. That's what's gonna make it.
So we're planning to be in a studio within the next couple of years with proper soundproof glass and everything. But one step at a time.
I mean, you joke, but yeah.
But the thing is, we're not quite there yet. We're now. I am investing in a popcorn making machine with kernels and with a popcorn, a lovely popcorn, retro vintage popcorn container. So when Steve goes on his rants, I can sit back with my popcorn and just eat away, because I just find it. I'd love it. Anyway, we're gonna get through other people in the call in this evening,
No worries.
Dureco. But cheers for coming on. Thank you. Well done for being as high up as you are,
absolutely.
and keep coming on the show, man. Keep coming on the show. Cheers, buddy.
Thank you very much. Have a great evening.
And
Thank
you take
Cheers.
care. We've got a few
like I said-
new names in the waiting room, just to let you know, Steve. Yeah, what are you
Yeah,
saying,
that's
Steve?
fine. We'll just quickly get through this mini league, and then
Yeah,
we can get
sure.
straight onto calls. So we were just talking about Cy Bellamy. We know he's in the chat room at the moment. He is otherwise known as the best in Discord. That's his team as well.
Quite a
He's
humble
sixth
name.
in the whole world. And I mean, his team for people on audio, it's Nick Pope, Van Dijk, Alexander-Arnold, Digne, Fredericks, and then we got De Bruyne, Sterling, Salah. No, wait a minute, is that the best? Is this his team? Am I going mad?
Yeah. 70 points. Yeah.
4-3-3, and then Wesley, King, and Pookie up front, and then a bench of Lundstrom, Ceballos, and then his standard pick of a non-playing player is in Drinkwater, but whatever. I just think it's just... You look at this team, Jason, you think, how on earth is this 16th in the world? But you look at his captain picks over the last 3 game weeks, and just to remind everybody, Sai hasn't played a single chip. So last week he got a whopping 93 points, and he captained Pookie. Game week one.
That's the big one.
Yeah, and that's the key. And he also had Lundstrom playing with a whopping 14 points. Game week 1, an absolutely incredible score of 91 points. He captained Salah on the day. Of course, he had Sterling, De Bruyne already in the team. Billy, I mean, it's the differential picks.
Billy Sharp, 8
Billy
points.
Sharp.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's like a Dan Bull special, but
It
actually getting the points rather than having Glenn Murray doing.
He's still waiting on
nothing.
Murray to get in return. It is.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's again, game week 2, having Lundstrom in the starting lineup, 14 points straight away. 34 points from Pookie. I mean, that sort of thing propels you. Because a lot of people, by that point, a lot of people didn't even get on that Pookie bandwagon at that point. So game week 2, he got on it. And then game week 3, 70 points, which is a massive score for game week 3. A lot of people getting between the realms of 45, 55 points. He's sitting on 70. Big green arrow, top 16. Well, we keep talking. We talk a lot about Cy Bellamy's team. We don't want to give him a big head. His head's big enough as it is. But yeah, the pressure's on him, and he knows he's got to make that. He either has to make that transfer or save it. I think that he doesn't need to make a transfer. I think he can just save it himself.
Yeah, so you got Dereco number 1. This is in our free mini league, just to remind everybody. Dereco number 1, Cy Bellamy number 2. Cy, you mentioned about how tight everything is. Cy's only 13 points ahead of Marlon Moore, who we've already discussed, number 1. But Marlon's 125th.
I know.
So there's only 13 points separating 16th and 125th. So there's hope for everybody there. We've already spoke about Marlon Moore. And then moving on to 4th spot, who are 2 points clear of 5th.
There's only 30 odd points separating, or 33. Oh, hang on, let me just do quick maths right now. 35, 36, 37, 38 points separate. 38 points separating myself in 10,000 to the top 20.
Wow.
So there you go.
Yeah.
That's how tight it is. So I mean that can be gained. That can be caught.
And then there's 33 points separating me from 4th spot in the cash mini league.
It's fine. It's fine.
But just to finally conclude the free mini league, we got a guy that's named himself Pookie Blinders, but whatever, his team, Bristol's FPL Elite. I wonder if that's Mike Brailsford's team. Who knows? But he played his wild card this week. His team in full: Matt Ryan, Suyunchu, Zinchenko, Wan-Bissaka, Mina, Sterling captain, Salah, De Bruyne, Mason Mount, Martial, and Firmino up front, and then a bunch of barring Lundstrom, just non-playing players. So there we are. That's the conclusion of the 2 mini leagues that, well, especially the cash mini league that we're taking so seriously. And you just mentioned we got brand new callers in the waiting room. And
let's bring him.
I think absolutely.
Let's bring him in. Let's bring him in. We've got a few people. We've got EFC04. Let's bring him. EFC04, you're live on air on a Monday night call-in with Steve-O and Jason. Your mic's currently muted, my friend. Can you unmute your mic and say hello? EFC04, are you there? Okay, we'll try and get you back. FAH, we'll bring in FAH. FAH, how you doing? You're live on the Monday night call-in with Jason and Steve-O. Can you hear me?
I can. Hello.
Hello, FAH, or should I just call you Far?
Yeah, that works.
Far, how you doing, man?
I'm pretty good this week.
I don't know. Have you been with us before? I don't recognise your name.
No, I just found you guys last week, so.
Oh wow, last week. Okay, so first and foremost, how did you find the Discord? Have you recently joined Discord? Have you been a member of the Discord for a while now, or since you first joined?
Yeah, I was using it this weekend, just getting some advice on my team, and it's really good. Yeah.
That's good. We're growing it. I mean, we're approaching the 800 users on Discord now. It's only growing. It's growing and growing and growing. It's crazy. It's a great place, isn't it, Far? You keep muting your mic, by the way, Far. You've muted your mic. There you go.
Yeah.
So, Far, have you posted your team by any chance in the Rate My Team channel?
I have at 8:31. I think it's the last one.
Yeah, I've got it here. That's great. Yeah. Cool. I'll bring it up now. So you got 72 points. That's an amazing score for Game Week 3. So well done to you. Henderson in goal. No points in defence like most of us here. 2s and 1s. Henderson in goal. Robertson, Laporte, Digne and Walker-Peters. So not much there in returns wise, but that's where your points are all coming from your midfield and attack. I mean, that is one hell of a return there from your attackers. Haller and Abraham up front. Abraham and Haller and or Allaire. I keep calling him Haller. I do apologise. Lanzini with 5 points. Salah with 15. Your captain Sterling with 16. Sigurdsson the only real blur there with 2, but Haller or Allaire and Abraham with 13 points each. You've got to be over the moon. You must be. What rank are you?
I'm just snuck into the top 100k.
Wow.
I was about 1,000,000th though, I think.
You really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a massive jump. Good week. That's a massive jump.
I was feeling very nervous before the week. I saw loads of people playing their wild card. I wasn't sure about Abraham. I wanted to take out Sigurdsson and Walker-Peters, to be honest, although he had a good fixture. But I'm pretty happy that I've stuck with it now. I went for Haller this week, and it's paid off.
So looking at that team, then you got double West Ham. You got Sigurdsson still in your team. Are you thinking of possibly shipping one of them out at all? I mean, obviously Lanzini got you an assist, but are you thinking at all of going forward with Sigurdsson perhaps, or are you going to save your transfer for the international break?
So I've kind of got my transfers mapped out for the next 3 weeks.
Okay.
As long as nothing happens, I think I'm going to keep with Lanzini and Haller for now. I think West Ham's fixtures are pretty good. Sigurdsson, I was going to transfer out for Martial, but we got to wait to see what happens with his injury.
Yeah.
Then week later, I want to take out Walker-Peters because I watched the Tottenham game and I was just so disappointed with how he played. Not just that he got injured, but he just looked nervous the whole game.
I see you got Højbjerg on the bench. Would you be looking to try and get Cantwell in, or do you think now because of his price rises it's pretty hard?
I would if I didn't want to take anyone else out, but I'm not going to take the -4 hit.
No, for a bench player. Yeah. But yeah. Walker-Peters. Sorry, did you say who are you thinking to replace Walker-Peters with?
I think I'm going to put Loughton in. Burnley.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, he was
gone for Peters, but
Loughton was on 3 bonus points up until the last dying embers of the game. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was. Up until the dying embers, and then we all know what happened in the 98th minute, and that all got cancelled out. So yeah, Loughton is, I mean, definitely it's not a highly owned player as well, and we all know that Burnley are generally a very good defence. So yeah, that could definitely work out for you. And congratulations with such a great game week score, Steve. Have you got anything to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, just of interest, have you actually used any chips this season?
Have I got any what? Sorry.
Have you used any chips this season?
No, I haven't.
So you're actually
on my wild card.
Brilliant. And again, another question: how many transfers have you got in the bank? Is it just one, or have you got 2?
No, I've got one for next week. I'm just going to use my things planned out. Sigurdsson for Martial this week. Walker Peters for Lownton next week.
Yeah.
Henderson for Rui Patricio the week after. I want to do, and then maybe Abraham out. Chelsea
depending on how he.
I know. I know Dereko's got Patrizio, but why Patrizio?
I don't know. The only defenses that I really like this season are Man City, Liverpool, Burnley, and Wolves. And I know they haven't got. Well, I think Patricio is the top scorer, but I just like those defenses the most.
So you've chosen four teams that basically haven't kept a clean sheet this season, whereas not literally, but whereas someone like Everton, I'm thinking of.
But I watch the games. I just don't feel good. I'm playing mainly based on how I feel, and
So you got feeling, yeah.
You actually base your decisions on actually watching the games.
Yeah, so
Brilliant.
I'm a Chelsea fan. That's why I went for Abraham. I watched him in pre-season, and I sort of thought Lampard would pick him. I was getting really nervous before this game week. I thought he wasn't going to play, but it's worked out for me so far. We're going to carry on.
So your thoughts then on Mason Mount? Is he injured or is it just a bit of cramp and he'll definitely start at the weekend?
He's not injured, Pete.
I think he'll start next week. The reason I haven't gone for him so far, A, is I'm a Chelsea fan, so I don't want to jinx it.
Yeah.
B, I think Barkley will sometimes rotate. I think they definitely would have rotated more if Mount hadn't started so well. And with Loftus-Cheek and Hudson-Odoi coming back in soon, I think they both just started training. I think he might get less minutes. I think he'll play a lot still, but I'm just worried about that.
Fascinating. Do you think then that the transfer of, like in my case, Perez to Mason Mount for this game week is actually worth it, or do you think just hold on to Perez for one more game versus Bournemouth?
I think it's worth it. I think Mount will play definitely for the next 4 game weeks, and I think Perez is useless.
Yeah.
Even in Newcastle, I almost went for him at the start because he was a midfielder when he's obviously a striker, but I couldn't do it.
Thank you for the call. Any final thoughts before we let you go?
No, I'm really enjoying the show. I know I've only been here a week, but really enjoying it so far.
Thank you. We're getting a lot of great positive feedback, and it's great to hear that you're enjoying the show. And we look forward to speaking to you again, Far.
Right, thank you.
Cheers now. Take care.
I'm going to do a Jason. I'm going to do a live poll. I want to see the reaction from chat, and based on Far just now. And I am very, very tempted of doing this. So just quite simply put a Y if you think, yes, I should do this. Do you think I should just do Perez to Mason Mount now to not miss out on the price drop, or the price rise, more to the point? I want to make some money, and I'm actually very, very tempted of doing Mason Mount Perez to Mason Mount now, and everybody's saying why. So I think I'm going to do Jason, everybody, I'm doing a live transfer right now.
Oh, it's backwards. I think. But yeah, that's a Y.
Oh, it's not actually on my screen.
There, it's on yours now. There you go, it's on yours.
Oh, why?
There you go. Yeah. Do it.
I'm going to do it, yeah. I'm doing a Jason. I'm doing an early transfer. Let's get Mason Mount in, and let's see Perez score a brace versus Bournemouth, and Mason Mount do absolutely nothing versus, is it Sheffield United? Yeah.
Do it.
So I'm going to do it. The screen is up. I'm hitting that button, add player, and away we go. Jason, let's bring in the next caller, and let's see what they have to say. So you wanted to bring on more brand new callers. I think it's fantastic that we're getting more and more new people involved.
Let's bring in Jewish, you're live on the Monday night call-in with Steve-O and Jason. Are you there? Jewish, are you there? He's muted himself and deafened himself. Okay, we'll come back to you. We've got Resemble. Resemble, you're live on the Monday night call-in with Steve-O and Jason. Are you there?
Yeah.
How are you doing, Resemble?
I'm good, bro. Right, my team.
Welcome to the stream first and foremost. I don't think I've spoken to you before.
Nope.
And
You haven't.
and how's your team been doing?
I already wild carded
You've okay.
because I wanted to get De Bruyne in,
That's
and I
not a
wanted
bad
to get
show.
Martial in,
Yeah.
but Martial just got injured.
Well, we don't know if he's definitely like injured in terms of maybe just be a little bit of a concern. I wait for the press conferences before worrying about that. But I've got your team up on screen now.
Just to clarify,
Wait,
this
how
is
do
the
you have
wild
my
card
team?
team.
Yeah.
Right.
This is
Very nice.
This is.
Very.
I wild carded for Gameweek 3.
Right, so you've got for
yeah.
the guys listening in, you've got Ryan in goal. So you've wildcarded knowing that Ryan faces Man City.
No, but I wildcarded to get him in for Southampton because I thought, yeah, that's a clean sheet. We lost 2-0 there.
Yeah, we all know that happened, don't we? I think Ryan's returns was pretty much really limited to game week 1. I've got a feeling now, but yeah, the so that's I assume you're going to be taking Ryan out then because there's no other real transfers that you need to do.
Well, I might just like swap him out for Button because I don't want Ryan to get minus point.
What swap?
Because like if they get smashed by Man City like 5-0, then he'll get minus points. So I might just,
but
like,
Button won't play.
Swap Button out.
Oh.
Yeah, I know, but like obviously I've already used my one transfer because I swapped Jota out for Barnes before Barnes' price goes up because I think he's going to go up. Do you get what I'm saying?
Right. So you're thinking of playing Button instead of Ryan and then Ryan on the bench? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So if I play Button, obviously I know Button won't play, but then if Ryan like concedes like 20 goals, then he's not going to get minus. I won't get any minus. Do you know what I mean?
I hate to say it, but but if you go, okay, I see what you mean. But
and then I'll have Ryan.
He'll be brought on though, won't he? He'll be brought on. Ryan will be brought on for Button if he doesn't play. He'll be auto subbed.
Yeah, but Button isn't going to play. Oh, do you mean if?
Yeah, so Button Button won't play, but you'll get all. Yeah.
I don't care anyway because he's got Burnley and Newcastle next. So I just kept him in.
Okay. So moving on from that, we've got Van Dijk, Zinchenko, Wan-Bissaka, and Digne. A solid back four there. Going forward, you've got to be confident with those. I do think Wan-Bissaka is a good one to keep hold of. Don't be too worried about his 0 points last week.
I got Wan-Bissaka in because like I knew his price was going up. Because like my squad value's 100.9. Because like I made my wild card before like De Bruyne went up, Pukki went up, Sterling went up, Martial went up, Wan-Bissaka went up.
Okay.
And Ryan went up.
So you say you used your transfer. Who did you say you transferred in?
I got Barnes in for instead of Jota. Wolves Jota.
Barnes.
Swapped Jota out because he blanked. Because even though Barnes has got Liverpool.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you've done the right move there because you've used your free transfer.
I'll explain.
Okay, go on explain.
So because I had 0.2 left and Jota went down to 6.4, so I've seen like Barnes will probably go up by 0.1, like before the Liverpool game.
Right.
So if he goes up, then I wouldn't have been able to get him. So I just got him in now before he goes up, and I've got a Liverpool defender. So if they keep a clean sheet, then I get the points. And then even if Burnley do score, it's like 99% Barnes is going to be involved. And then also his next 4 fixtures are all green. So I just thought I'd get him in before he goes up.
Okay, I understand that. Okay, that's fine. So anyway, so assuming that you're going to be sticking with Ryan because the fixtures after City aren't too bad. So you got your midfield of Sterling, Salah, De Bruyne, and Martial, and then Pukki alongside Barnes. I mean, so you're pretty much then set for game week 4. And are you? Like I said, are you saying that you've got a plan for after the City game for Ryan? Or are you going to keep hold of Ryan then? You're going to just save transfers?
I'm keeping Ryan. I'll get one transfer next week and then I'll probably keep it, but I don't know when Mendy's going to be back, because I'll have to swap Zinchenko out for Mendy.
Okay, so I just, when you wildcarded, did you bring them players in for that 1 week, or in terms of, did you think, right, all these players have got good fixtures, or have you just brought them in for that specific week? Because obviously you brought Jota in on your wildcard, and then you've.
Well, I thought when I wildcarded, it was like a long-term thing, but I thought like I'll keep Jota in because he's got Burnley at home, and I thought he might get something. But he didn't even get anything. And then I've swapped him out straight away. So Jota's gone. The midfield, like Salah, Sterling and De Bruyne, unless one of them gets injured, like they're never getting swapped out.
Mm-hmm.
Van Dijk never gets swapped out. Probably same with Digne. Then Pukki probably never gets swapped out now. The only people that I'm thinking of changing is Zinchenko, because obviously if Mendy, not now, but I think Mendy's going to be back for Norwich after the international break, or like he'll be in and around the squad trying to get his place back.
Right.
So I'll have to swap Zinchenko out for Mendy, so then I'll be down like 0.4 million. So I'll have to make another like change. So I don't know if I want to change like Martial out and get like either another, just someone else in midfield.
Okay.
Or get another striker.
I mean, it is a wait and see, isn't it? It's a wait and see on Martial. I think Martial's going to be alright going forward. I know I said that Wan-Bissaka would be fine against Palace, but I got good feeling. I got good vibes with United still. I'm not going to be too down about that. And you've got Barnes in. Admittedly, it's Liverpool, but Liverpool have been conceding goals. If you think anyone's going to score against Liverpool, it probably will be Barnes. So yeah. Steve, any final thoughts?
No, other than it just looks like the standard Elite FPL community.
If Martial's injured, shall I play Douglas Luiz or shall I play Lundstrom?
Douglas. Crystal Palace aren't going to score against Aston Villa.
There you go. There you go. Cheers ever so much, Resemble, for coming on, buddy. We'll speak to you again, I'm sure.
Cheers, bro.
Have a good night, buddy. Yeah. Take care now.
Cheers, thank you. Can I just bring up a couple of points, Jason, in the chat? Number one, it's Show Me the Mane. He's live in chat now. We'd love to get you live on air because you are top of the Cash Mini League, and we are wanting the guys that are in the top 4 spots in the Cash Mini League and the free. Was he second? Is he sorry?
Yeah, he's second. Yeah.
I'd like them to come on and discuss their teams. He says that Jason said my team is awful, but I'm still second. And then a wonderful message from Zulu Ninja, and I feel for you, mate. So every live stream, the wife has to come in to speak to me every 5 minutes about absolutely nothing. All day she has bugger all to say, but know that I'm wanting to watch something. She has to talk. Yep, it's the same as me at work. Not a single human being in the canteen speaks to me. The second I hit play on whatever it will be, the bill, someone starts speaking to me, and I just want to tell them to off. But anyway,
I think we should start a petition for Steve-O to get the bill reinstated on TV.
No, don't do that. No.
How many episodes were there? I'm sure you know.
It went between 84 and 2010. I'm at 2006 at the moment, so I'm really watching.
Wow, that's one hell of a marathon. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to do a quick bit of admin for everybody that is watching. We are approaching record figures watching this particular stream, and it's just quite simple, really. Hit that like button. That's the easiest way to show your support for the channel, by hitting that like button. If you are enjoying the stream and you haven't subscribed, we are pretty much a daily live stream show. So by all means, just hit that subscribe button, and you will be able to get part of it. And of course, being part of this means you could, if you want to, be part of the Discord, where you can come live on air with myself and Jason. Jason, who's up next?
Well, a few people were talking about the bill, got Brew and chat, and who is it? I think it was Fast Air saying, I remember Reg in the bill. I remember Reg in the bill too. He was one of my favourites. Let's bring it on. Let's see if EFC04 is working now. EFC04, are you there? You were muted before. You're not now. Let's see if you can get... keeps jumping out of the channel. Hello. Yeah. Oh, here we go. EFC, you there, buddy? Are you there, buddy? Hello. Can you hear us? We almost we've got one more chance. Come on, EFC, can you hear us?
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah, Daddy Longlegs just came in and almost killed me. Oh, God. Okay, EFC, can you hear us?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I've just been attacked by by a crane fly. So, how's your week? Are you new to the channel by any chance? I think you're watching the stream, aren't you? That's what it is. He's watching the stream. He can't talk to us. Right. Let's bring on Ashir. Ashir. How are you doing, Ashir? Ashir, you're live on the Monday Night Call-In. Okay. Smithy J. You're live on the Monday Night Call-In. Smithy.
Sergeant Smith on the bill.
Hello, Smithy. How you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks.
Welcome. You're live on the FPL Monday Night Elite FPL Call-In. We're talking about Game Week 3. How did you do Game Week 3, Smithy?
I did pretty good. I got my team at 804 in the Rate My Team.
Yeah, I see it here. You got a massive 71 points. That's amazing. You've got to be pleased. Whereabouts are you in the rankings then?
I think I'm top 40k.
Wow, nice.
Sorry, what was that? Sorry, you broke up for me. You're where?
I'm top 40k.
Top 40k. Wow.
I'm a bit annoyed because Game Week 1, I had Taylor from Burnley, but I missed out on clean sheet points because he got injured.
Oh, well, that's just you can't help that. That's unfortunate, but it does happen. It's beyond your control. It's just unlucky. But we're talking about. The back line for everybody. Game Week 3 didn't get you anything. It's no different for you. But you did have, at least you had Alexander-Arnold, the right Liverpool defender in your team. And you had Mason Mount, which has also returned you 8 points. So, that midfield and your attacking line all returning 71 points. Surely, you're going to keep hold of Mason Mount. You're going to be looking at possibly saving a transfer, surely, going into the international break.
Well, I'm pretty happy because my 2 transfers were King for Pookie and Barkley for Mount, so that went well. I'm thinking of going Ryan to Heaton, but that's about it.
Ryan to Heaton, yeah, that's of course. That was probably the only transfer that you right, Steve-O?
I'm just laughing at something that FPL Boomer and Zulu Ninja said. In fact, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to do the old Office joke where I'm not going to actually mention the comment made, but it just reminded me of a David Brent joke where he's in the Christmas edition of The Office and he just simply says, half a pound of sugar is the same amount as what a strawberry contains, or whatever. It's just, as New Zulu Ninja says, it's a pointless fact. I apologise. I'm just reading the chat there.
Well, thank you for that. And so yeah, Smithy, Ryan to Heaton, is that the transfer?
Yeah, I was thinking because I'm not thinking
that's
of
what I've done.
for a
That's
while.
what I've done. So there you go. It's got to be a good move.
Yeah. I'm not thinking of wildcarding for a while, so I was considering getting Cantwell for Dendonka, but I'll wait for that.
Well, yeah.
I agree. You don't need to waste a transfer on that per se, but certainly the Ryan to Heaton move. Jason's already done it. It makes complete sense there.
Yeah, it is. It is. That team's set for Game Week 4. Good points this week, and hopefully good points next week. Thank you ever so much for coming on, and
thanks.
Hopefully we'll speak to you again soon, Smithy. You take care, buddy. Cheers, dude. Thank you.
Bye.
Oh, Smith, before you go, how long have you been part of the community?
Since pre-season.
Oh,
nice.
And
nice.
Have you been in the Discord talking much?
Yeah, I haven't been in the voice chats yet, but I've been on the text chats.
Yeah, and how are you finding it? Is it a good source of information?
Yes, I like it a lot.
We've got the Twitter feeds now. I don't know if you noticed. We've got the FPL status tweets and we've got the Ben Dillon tweets, which are really useful for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But a pleasure to have you on, Smithy, and hopefully speak to you again soon.
Thanks.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Cheers.
Let's get on G-Wiz. I know we wanted new callers on, but I'd like to speak to G-Wiz.
G-Wiz, the legend that is G-Wiz. Are you there, my friend? You're live on air, G-Wiz. Here he is. There we go. Can you hear us?
Yeah.
How you doing, G-Wiz?
A bit better than I was doing, say, after Saturday's game.
Yeah, it takes a few days to cool down, but we don't have to keep going on about it. But it's nice to see that you've cooled down a little bit. Well, you were laughing about it anyway. You weren't exactly angry about it, were you?
I wasn't angry. I was chilled, but
Yeah.
it's good to see the recovery happen.
It's game week 4 build up now. That's where you got to look at it. It's the build up to game week 4, and you forget about the events of game week 3. It wasn't great for a lot of people, to be fair. We've just had a few people coming on to show off their 70+ scores, and that's great and everything. But yeah, game week 4 is coming up now. And whereabouts are you in the cash league, G-Wiz?
Yeah, I'm trying to look for you, and
I'm trying to find
I
you.
thought you were on the second page, but I can't see it.
60-something.
Yeah? Can't see it.
61st.
Oh, 61st. Yeah, here we are. Wiz's Heroes. My apologies. Yeah.
There we go. We got you.
Just
apparently, 53 with a -4,
Yeah,
49 points, was good enough for a green arrow in that league. So, yeah.
What?
Was an
Oh my god, the only league. Oh no, bar one, the only league. That's crazy. Red arrows and everything else, but sorry, a couple of leagues
Yeah,
actually. Three red arrows. Sorry, three green arrows. The rest of them red. But to be fair, I mean it's not the end of the world. I mean, what was the game week average? It was. Do you know?
The game week
44, wasn't it? Yeah, 44.
Yeah, so it's above the game week average. So don't worry about it. And are you set for game week 4? Are you all set?
Yeah, done. Yeah.
Have you made a transfer?
No.
Good.
I've made 2.
You've made 2? Fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah? Have you really?
Yep.
Are you willing to reveal them?
For you, Steve, of course I will, bruv.
Okay. What are they? That's another -4. I'm surprised.
Yeah, 2 -4s. This one is Zoomer out and
okay.
Yeah, you weren't a fan
King
of Zoomer.
out. Yeah, but I didn't want to get rid of him this week because their fixtures look good now. But anyway,
Too late.
Zoomer out and Wilson and King out. Sorry, Zoomer and King out for the man like Pookie and the man like Loughton.
Right, okay.
Right.
You finally jumped on the Pookie train then, Wes?
I had to because he was going to go up to 6.9.
Someone mentioned he's going to go up to 7 tonight, apparently.
Yeah. This is exactly what I'm talking about. That one move is purely a transfer market move that's forced my hand because it's madness to go without him at the moment. So
It seems
I took
to.
a -4.
I like the Loughton pick. Can you talk us through why you chose Loughton? Obviously, other than budget, I suppose, but...
No, it was because Burnley's fixtures coming up now, apart from obviously Liverpool next week, which, you know what, I still might even play him anyway, but their run of fixtures look absolutely nice to me, so I thought, jump on.
Really?
And
you'd play a Burnley defender next week. Okay, interesting. But I mean,
I'm thinking about it.
Yeah. I think Steve-O's going to predict a very low-scoring game in that Burnley game. I think that Burnley will frustrate Liverpool. I certainly don't think Salah will be getting another 15 points, but obviously I've been known to be wrong from time to time. But it's pretty straightforward moves. It's good that you've joined the Pookie community, the Pookie bandwagon. You've got to be happy with your team going forward then.
Yeah, still got my wild card in my pocket. Ain't played any chips.
Yeah.
Overall rank 752.
Yeah,
that'll have to do.
Well, it's not. I mean, you're in the top 1 million. It's it's out of 6.4 million people. So
we was talking before because I've gone from 600,000 to 1.6 million after Saturday. So to be ranked 700,000, I'll take that.
Absolutely.
Red arrow.
Yeah. So no, and like we're saying, there's a lot of people stuck on the similar sort of scores at the moment. And as soon as the game weeks go off, game week 6, game week 8, you'll start to really know where you're going to be. And if you have a few good weeks, you could definitely find yourself high in the top 100,000. But Wiz, it's always a pleasure to have you on. Have you got anything else to say?
Just keep up the good work, lads, and I'll see you in Discord later on.
Yeah, I know. We're going to be doing another movie night as well. That's another thing, guys. If you are interested, get involved. We did a movie night a few days ago where we all chilled and watched the movie in Discord. some people are interested in it, others aren't. But if you are, just hit us up in Discord. We'll be doing a vote at some point this week to discuss the movie. And Wiz, I'll look forward to speaking to you again on Discord.
All right.
Cheers, buddy.
Good luck and thanks for having me on. Cheers.
Cheers, Wiz.
Thank you.
All the best, buddy. Let's bring in. See if we can bring in some newbies. I think it's Buster Barnes. Buster Barnes, you're on air on a Monday night call-in with Steve-O and Jason. Are you there, Buster? Can you hear us, Buster? Come on, Buster. We know you can do it.
No.
Oh no, Buster, we can't hear you, my friend. I'm sorry. We're gonna have to get someone else on. So we'll bring in Fantasy Football Focus. Fantasy Football Focus, you're live on air on the Monday night. On the review of Gameweek 3, where we're discussing everyone's points and mini leagues. How are you doing this evening?
Unlucky.
All good, yourself?
Yeah, I'm doing great, thanks, Mr. Focus. How was your? Oh, okay. I've just got it. I've just seen it. Talk me through your game week.
Oh, well, Foster in goal, 3 points was okay for a sit and forget. To get them 3 points, that was okay. Save the penalty, though. That would have been amazing, but Noble's good at them. Pepe showing what he can do against Liverpool, but I think, obviously, there'll be more to come from him.
Yeah, he looks really good, but he just looked a bit rusty. I think he was making all the right moves and make the right runs, but I think that one-on-one, Vadran, I think he could have scored that if he'd have had a bit more match time. I think in the Premier League, I think he's a bit rusty at the moment. New into the Arsenal team, I think he's only going to improve. Anything else you want to say about your team? I'm just looking at those two Man United defenders. Are you having second thoughts about having two United defenders in your team?
Slightly, but no, I'm keeping the faith with them. I do think that as the season goes on, it's the same as Arsenal and a few others that bring in play. They need to gel. They just need time, and I think they'll be fine. So I'm not panicking on them, but I've made one transfer already, and I wonder if you guys can guess who I've got rid of.
Well, I mean, I'm looking at your team here, and I'm thinking there's any number one of changes to get rid of, but I'm going to go with probably Perez.
Well, no, he's been awful, isn't he? So not a bad guess at all.
Keane?
If I could have, Moise Keane, absolutely.
So Barnes,
yes,
by any
gone.
chance?
No, I'm not on Barnes train. I think Barnes is doing, but I think there will come a time when he doesn't score that many. But I guess his fix. I've gone with Tammy Abraham. Having said that, I'm praying that Mason Mount is part of that team.
Okay, yeah, okay. So Tammy Abraham. Sorry, you're breaking up slightly there, Mr. Focus. So I've just brought your volume down a little bit as well.
You guys, I need to upgrade my internet. That's the truth. So I will do that because it's getting beyond.
Oh, is it your internet? Is it that's playing up?
Yeah, no. Having me on, guys. Sorry, my voice isn't fully connected, but I appreciate it.
No, that's fine. It's just one of those things. Yeah, Tammy Abraham. I mean, I pretty much said that he would be a good pick, and I think ultimately you're set for Game Week 4. Just gonna go shut the door. Bear with me a sec.
Crane flies.
Yeah. Can I ask you a fantasy focus? Have you wildcarded at all, or have you still got that chip?
I've still got my chips.
Have you thought about using your wildcard? Because this team, to me, screams out wildcard. I mean, Moise Keane, Tielemans, Perez, Wan-Bissaka, Maguire, Foster. I mean, Pepe.
What's your subs? Sorry, what's your subs?
My subs bench is awful. It's
Just
Winston Reid, who is not going to play. Nelson. And who else have I got? Oh, Lundstram.
Oh, it's not too bad. Lundstrom.
Have you considered the wild card then, or are you just persisting and trying to get the most out of this particular team?
Yeah, I'm just basically trying to keep my cool and not make rash decisions. I'm trying to change from last season, so I'm being a lot more patient, as hard as that can be. Yes, I fully agree. Tielemans and Perez are screaming, "Get me out of here!" But I've just been using my normal subs to do that. So Keena's gone and Tammy Abraham's in, and you never know. Tielemans and Perez could turn up with just something until I can ship them.
No, fair enough. I think that you're breaking up a little bit there, fantasy football focus.
Yeah.
But I think we've got what you're trying to get at. I dare say you probably will need to make a move on your wild card in the not too distant future. It's a wait and see on in the likes of Perez, Tielemans. You've got double United that could or could not pay off for you, and like you said, you've got a bench that could do with a revamp. So thanks for coming on, and we'll speak to you, I'm sure. And sorry to hear about your internet playing up.
That's all right. I'll wildcard my internet and my FPL team. So thanks for having me on, guys.
To get on the phone to
Cheers,
him.
dude.
Cheers, buddy. Cheers now.
Cheers.
Right, that's unfortunate. I mean, I love having him on. He's a nice guy. It's just his internet has been playing up. Let's bring on. Let's see. We've got Tornado Gangster. Come on, then. Tornado Gangster. I know you've been waiting for ages. Come on, how you doing, buddy?
Hello.
How you doing, Mr. Guy that blows in the mic? How you doing, buddy?
Doing good.
Yeah. Very very quickly then. So have you posted your team in the Rate My Team recently?
The community team.
Sorry?
Above community, the Steve put.
You're too quiet. I can't hear you.
It's above the community team that he put. That Steve put.
Oh, right, okay. What about the community team?
I got it. Yeah, I've got it. Yeah, I've got it. Yeah, it's about right. Okay, so right, 72 points. Oh, look at you, Tornado Gangsters. Sorry,
-8.
-8. Okay, so 64 points. That's a great score, isn't it? Are you? I think we talked to you on Sunday, didn't we?
No,
we didn't.
I was not able to get on.
Oh, were you not able? Okay, I'm sure I saw this team. Son and Kane. Okay, then I'll ask you the same question as I asked the caller with Son and Kane in the team. Are you sticking with both of them, or are you going to be looking to move one out?
I'm moving both.
Both?
Like me.
Yeah.
Okay, and why both?
I mean, they couldn't do that much against Newcastle, so what do I expect them to do against after the Arsenal game?
So okay, who would be the replacements? I presume Sterling.
No.
No.
Martial for Son.
Yeah.
Aguero for Kane.
Okay. Obviously, Jesus being with slight hamstring injury, I believe it was, in training. Aguero being back in scoring form, back in the team, could definitely pay off, definitely work out. And the biggest thing about Aguero is he's not owned by many people, so it's one hell of a differential. Would Aguero be a possible captain? Are you doing this move this week?
Yeah.
So would Aguero be your choice to captain up against Brighton then?
Maybe.
I mean, again, my opinion only, but if I was bringing Aguero in against Brighton, I think I'd probably captain him, to be honest with you. And if I didn't have, I said that with Kane, yeah, but again, it's very unlucky that you didn't get that penalty, to be fair. But with De Bruyne in the team, you haven't got Sterling. I would go with I would go with Aguero if I was bringing him in personally. Steve-O, what about you?
Well, I agree with what you just said there, Jason. But you must have been loving life with the Salah captain. How can you went with him rather than the popular choice of Harry Kane?
Safe option.
You went with a safe option. So
okay, I would have thought Harry Kane would have been a more safe option, so to speak.
Yeah. Nothing to say about that, Tornado? You just seem to be pretty happy to keep the armband on Salah. So is the armband? So what's your thoughts with the captaincy for Game Week 4? I said to you about Aguero. Considering what you just said, it almost seems like it's set and forget on Salah. Is that right?
Right now it's Salah.
Right now it's Salah. Okay. Well, have a think about it, because I do think Aguero's got the highest ceiling, I think, in that game at home to Brighton. But yeah, appreciate it. Appreciate you coming on and showing us your team.
Yep, thanks.
Cheers, dude. Speak soon. Well, interesting. Interesting that he just keeps the armband on Salah. That's a different. I mean, definitely a tactic that's paid off for him Game Week 3. I can't fault him for that. I mean, Steve-O, I suppose it doesn't give you a headache if you're going to keep the captaincy on one player.
No, absolutely. I completely agree.
Let's bring on Dick. Dick, you're on air. It's Monday night. We're talking about Game Week 3 and going into Game Week 4. Can you hear us?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Dick. How you doing?
I'm all good. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Is it Dick short for Richard?
Yeah.
Right, okay, no worries. And so, Dick, have you posted your team in the rating
Yeah, I
team?
think it's about
2056, yeah.
2056. Thank you ever so much for that. So are you new to the channel? Because I don't think I've seen you in Discord before.
This is my first time coming on air. I've been watching your videos for about a month and a half, but I only found the Discord about 2 weeks ago.
Oh, right. So in terms of like, you only found out about the Discord 2 weeks ago, or you just decided to join 2 weeks ago?
I decided to join. I knew that you had it, and I wasn't too sure if I should join it. Then I just decided I may as well.
I'm detecting an accent, Dick. Matt Brunton's saying that in chat. So Steve-O's the king of accents. Right, so Steve-O, do you want to go ahead and ask or guess where Dick's from?
No.
No, we missed.
Maybe Newport. No, obviously from Ireland. Whereabouts in Ireland?
Dublin.
Dublin, very, very nice indeed.
Certainly...
so we got you, like you said, we got your team up on screen here. It's 46 points. Not the greatest of game week. Your 5-4-1 formation here. You benched Callum Wilson. I mean, I don't blame you in that. But what made you choose? Well, King over Wilson? Is it just the penalty factor?
It was basically, the penalties. Like City have only conceded, I think, two goals since last January from open play. So I thought he had the best chance of scoring. So,
damn,
it's just the way it goes. It was a jammy FPL assist as well.
Points. It's 3 points. It's not the end of the world.
No, and I'm not too worried about getting 46 points. It's about average. So. It's not the end of the world.
I mean, 6 points from 6 players, though. That's gotta be.
Yeah, that's not great.
That's the one game week where you wouldn't want to have 5 defenders. It's pretty much. Yeah. It's just been an awful game week for defenders as a whole, really. And I don't think you really got any issues in that team whatsoever going forward. Have you got any transfer ideas? I mean, Perez is someone where Steve-O's looking to try and offload as soon as possible.
Well, it's already happened, Jason. So.
Oh, there you go. He's done it. He's brought in Mount. So
I might follow the same suit. I don't know. I do have one free transfer, but I'm not sure if I should hold the transfer and let him play against Bournemouth and see what happens. But I don't know. 3 weeks, 3 blanks. It's a bit hard to justify at the same time.
Sometimes there's being patient, and then then it becomes stubbornness. So it's just knowing when to say goodbye, really. And Perez, we were all optimistic about Perez coming the start of the season.
To be fair, we did think that he'd be playing behind Jamie Vardy. He hasn't. He's just been playing on the right. So and that's not. From a fantasy perspective, but he got the majority of his points last season when he was basically playing up front for Newcastle, or maybe just behind the striker, whoever that may have been, but not on the wing.
Yeah, that's very true.
I mean, you've got that option there, or you can save a transfer. Are you got any plans on your wild card or?
I don't know. I think last season it was game week 18 or 17 when I used my wild cards. So usually I keep it for as long as possible and try try use it if I have 2 or 3 injuries. So I think I might just hold out.
Well, that's
I don't know.
That's it. I think I was certainly looking at my team. I was always planning to do it game week 4 international break. At the start of the season, I thought, yeah, it's probably when I'm going to play it. But looking at my team, it's pretty much consistent of the players that everyone's bringing in, so it's just not necessary. So I certainly won't be playing it until I absolutely need to, in terms of whether it be an injury problem that I have in my team, whether it be a swing in fixtures or anything like that. So yeah, it's I'm inclined to agree that it's never an exact science on your wild card, but certainly we'll be assessing it going forward. But Dick, thank you ever so much for joining us on air and showing us your team. You've got a good team there, buddy. Shame about the score this week, but don't feel too dejected. I presume you didn't spend any points that week, did you?
No, I haven't.
It's fine. It's above average. It's above the average score. Whereabouts on the overall ranking are you?
I'm actually about 600k, and I've never been this low in my whole FPL career. So
it's all right. You're down there with GW3, and GW3 is normally pretty good. So there's a lot of people that are around that sort of mark at the moment that are seasoned FPL managers in between the 6 and 12, 6 and 1.2 million mark at the moment, which is quite surprising. But it's the way it is. It's like game week 3, so. A lot of swings.
Wherever you finish, that's the main thing. So I won't be too worried at the moment.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dick, for coming on this evening.
No problem.
Speak to you soon, hopefully. Take care, buddy. Excellent. That's been a great call. Someone new to the channel coming on to Discord for the first time and having a chat with us. More people piling in. Who do you want in next, Stevie?
I was going to say Khalil, who posted his team at 2052. I think with the amount of people that we've got coming on, I think maybe just shorten the time down now. Maybe just ask them a couple of questions and then get through them.
Khalil, we've got your team in front of us. What score did you get? Sorry.
I had 42 points. So guys, let me explain. I'm from Tunisia, so maybe I can't understand really the English because we don't speak English in Tunisia. I maybe say some wrong words.
No, you seem fine at the moment. I'll try to speak slower for you. Let me know if you can't understand anything.
No, I understand you now. I understand. I'm watching movies, but I just can say some wrong words.
That's fine.
I will send my team right now.
Yeah, I've got
my team.
You've got Edis. I think you sent it at
yes,
not so long ago, but half an hour ago.
Yes.
So you've got Edison in goal for the people listening in. Edison in goal with 3 points. Alexander-Arnold returning you as an assist of 5 points. Digne with the 1 point. Wan-Bissaka with 0, and Van Dijk with 2. So again, you've had those unfortunate 3 there. You're not getting you anything, but you did have the return from Alexander-Arnold, so better than most. We've got Sterling, which you didn't captain, as your vice with 8 points. Marshall with 5 points. Sigurdsson and Dendoncker. You played Dendoncker instead of King. I can understand why. And Pookie and Kane up front, and the armband on Kane. You've got to be very disappointed about that captaincy pick in Kane. Because...
Yes, and I was mad because Kane didn't even perform well in first 2 games. So I know that he's not that great. Even in the first game week when he scored 2 goals, he was not good. He was not playing good. Then I decided just to let him be my captain. I thought it's an easy game against Newcastle.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people thought the same.
I just activated my wild card today.
Why have you done that for?
I think I have double defense from Liverpool. This is bad. I have Sigurdsson, and Kane is not doing well. So and Ederson is not okay. Also, I can send you my new team. Can you give me some advice?
I'm very surprised that you've wildcarded. Very surprised that you wildcarded, but okay.
I just sent my new team in the rate my team.
Yes.
That's.
Oh yes, yeah.
Is there a chance, Khalil, that you've wildcarded out of frustration and anger?
Yes, of course. But I know that I just took the decision just after the game of Tottenham, so I was really angry and I wildcard. That's all.
Right.
But I have to say though that the actual wildcard team is fantastic. I'm not gonna lie. It is players of the moment, but
His
to be
players.
fair, they're all key to what their specific teams do, and I really, really do like that.
That is a very nice team. That is a really nice team. I can understand why you may have wanted to change them, but I don't think it necessarily needed a wildcard. But it's a it's a blue star wildcard team. Absolutely, it's what Shami Mane said in chat. Other than Mane, I think it's and obviously kept hold of Wan-Bissaka probably for monetary reasons. But yeah, it's I think you've done it now. You've done it now. You've got on the Cantwell Pookie. Well, you've certainly gone with Cantwell as well, and you've got him on the bench. You've got a strong bench. Okay, yeah, all right. Best of luck.
This is my first year. This is my first year in fantasy, so I don't really know about.
Well,
I'm just following. I'm following your advice.
Well, certainly, I wouldn't advise you to wildcard.
No, you're not about wildcard.
But
wildcard, it was on my head.
I think that you've done the best out of the situation. I think you've done the best out of the situation you were in with obviously Kane, with Sigurdsson in your team. You could have solved it with probably a -4, but you've wildcarded. We've done that now, and with the team that you've got in front of me right now, that is a very strong team. So yeah, I can see good things for that team going forward.
Thank you.
Some very key players. Thank you ever so much, Khalil, for coming on this show tonight, and we'll look forward to having you on again. Any final things you want to say?
I just love this show. It's amazing. I've been watching some FPL streamers, and it's not like your show. Your show is special. And the fact that I don't speak English very well, and I have the courage to come here and to speak to you guys, it's amazing, and the community is also amazing.
I can imagine.
Thank you.
I can imagine, Khalil. I can imagine going on a Tunisian fantasy football show and trying to speak Tunisian. That would be mind-blowing to me. I have got massive respect for you, Khalil, for coming on the show. Thank you.
Just to not to make it clear, some Tunisians speak English really well. It's just me. So
no. Your English is fine. I understand everything you're saying.
Yeah. Thank you.
Massive.
Do you know
respect.
where Tunisia is, by the way? Just.
Yeah. Eastern Europe.
No. This is wrong. It's in North Africa. It's North Africa. It's Algeria.
Yeah,
Morocco.
Eastern Europe and down a little.
Yeah.
Thank
you guys.
Thank you for coming on, Khalil.
I love you guys.
No, thank you ever so much. I can't keep telling you that. That's great. Thank you, massive respect. Wow, just having someone come on that doesn't speak English as a first language, has the courage to come on and speak about fantasy football, to me is just. I mean, the guys in chat are going to be probably having a go at me now for not knowing where Tunisia was. No, I'm going to get red now. Embarrassment. Let's move on to someone else. Steve-O, you can take.
Well, can we bring on Sultan, because he posed? I've got his team in front of me. 21-24.
Yeah, Sultan, you're live on the Monday Night Call-In with Steve-O and Jason. Steve-O's going to take it away. How you doing?
Hello there, Sultan.
Hiya, Jason. Hiya, Steve-O.
Hello there, mate. You've had a decent week this week of 60 points. Just one quick question, really. What are your transfer thoughts ahead of game week 4?
So I really wanted to get KDB in. I remember, I think I spoke to you guys on Saturday. I wanted to try and get him in. I didn't decide to go with the -8 of getting in Barnes and KDB. But I have now done it. So I've done a -4 this week to bring in. So I've taken out Wilson for Barnes and Perez for KDB before the price rise. I didn't want to take a risk because I knew Martial had a potential injury, but I would have been priced out. So I really wanted KDB in. So
Yeah. You must be very happy with this team in front of us. I think it's absolutely brilliant for people listening audio. We got Matt running goals in Zinchenko, Wan-Bissaka, Van Dijk, Digne, Sterling, Salah, Martial, Perez, Callum Wilson, Pukki, of course. Perez is now Kevin De Bruyne and Callum Wilson is now Barnes. I think it's pretty much my team, to be honest with you. A very, very good team. Yeah. You're in the cash league, aren't you?
Yeah. I think I'm 20th now. I went up a few places. That's
brilliant. You must be confident. Trying to get that top 4 position.
Yeah, I mean it's early days, but with the amount of like chips people are using, I think I counted there were like 12 people who have used at least one chip in the top 20.
Wow.
So there's only like 8 of us that like in the top 20 that haven't. So
for people that are watching, that are listening, that are part of the Cash Mini League, Sultan is actually on 205 points.
20 points behind third.
Yeah. So it's not that far off.
And
not at all. Like I said, you've got a really, really good team there. And
take care, Matt.
I hope you fail.
Mate. No, well, I mean, at the end of the day, it's game week 3. There's still very little in it, and I echo it. I think that I hope you make the wrong choice. That's fine.
Yeah. But in all seriousness, it's a great team, and there's nothing much I can add really, other than well done to you, and say good luck for game week 4. Yeah, good luck for game week 4, I suppose.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
No, cheers, buddy. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate it.
Speak to you soon.
Cheers. Speak soon. Really cheers now. Wow.
Let's bring on Moshe.
Good evening, Moshe. You're live on the Monday night call-in, FPL call-in. Can you hear us?
Yeah, hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah, not too bad. Interesting, Moshe. I don't think I've seen you in Discord before. Are you new?
I'm new to the Discord, but I've been commenting on YouTube for quite a while. I joined start of last season.
Okay, so start of last season you joined us.
Yeah, you guys had 60 subscribers at this.
Oh, it must. Yeah, so it was like game week 4, sort of game week 5 time. Then yeah. So
that's kind of when I started watching all of the YouTube stuff.
Wow, so you've been with us quite a while then. So you've seen the show evolve over the months. It's not been an incredible. It's not been an incredibly long period of time, but we certainly are a lot further along than where we started. Are you enjoying the call-in formats?
Yeah, it's all good. I comment on YouTube as well. I've got different names and everything. It's Ace Adventure on name.
Oh, Ace Adventure. Yeah, I know you. Yeah.
It's a Discord name, sir.
Well, welcome to the Discord, and I hope you enjoy it here, because this Discord community, I keep going on about it, but this Discord community is really, really a hive of FPL information, where you can share not only just screenshots of teams instead of having to write them out, but you can jump into voice channels, go into Hangout channels and chat. I mean, a great thing that's happening at the moment is during the games on a Saturday and a Sunday, we've got 15, 20 people in the Hangouts all talking about the events that are going on. And of course, everyone's getting the information at different times in different stages of the game. And someone will scream goal, or someone will scream VAR, and they'll be like, "No, whoa, what's going on? What's going on?" And it's just mental. So thank you for being a part of it.
You start to see people, like for example, when Steve-O did those transfers, and then I looked on Discord and saw a live commentary of everyone like, "Oh no," sort of thing. So it's quite funny.
Well, it's great to have you here. And Moshe, let me just start by asking: have you posted your team in the Rate My Team?
Yeah, probably about 10 minutes ago.
Let's have a look then.
It's at 21-22, 77 points. I mean, where are you ranked overall?
Yeah, that's why I came on, to be honest, because I finally had a good game week. So I think I got the highest rank in the league this week.
Wow.
What are you in the cash league?
No, unfortunately not. I would have joined if I knew about it earlier. But...
Okay.
There you go.
But where are you overall?
I'm hovering on about 20k.
20,000 in the world. That's amazing. That's really, really strong. And to be 20,000, and you had you're exactly like the same as me. You had Rashford and Wan-Bissaka.
Yeah, the triple up.
Yeah, but you just
triple up. It's gonna say.
You got your captaincy bang on the money with Salah.
And
There was,
Jimenez.
there was a really close call. I know everyone was going Sterling on the podcast, and I just thought it'd be a differential. Everyone was saying, Liverpool's going to be a high-scoring game. I kept faith in Salah, so what did we pay him?
Steve-O's
of course-
favourite player, Jimenez, there.
Well, yeah, but of course you've got Maddison as well, the only performing Leicester asset.
Yeah, that's it. People were ticking over. Like I had McGinn ticking over, Maddison ticking over, Jimenez just doing the business. So
You've got to be confident with that team going forward, surely. Are you looking at Mason Mount by any chance?
So I did get. I was thinking about it. I did my wild card game week 2, just to switch things up. Really early one, and now so I had 2 free transfers. And this morning I transferred out Wan-Bissaka and Rashford.
Okay, and
Ooh,
and
who did you bring in?
I think I'll regret it, but I brought in Haller and Digne.
Wow.
Digne.
I wanted to spread that defensive double up a bit more.
Okay.
And then It leaves me 0.7 in the bank, so next week I can switch Maddison when the fixtures change to Martial. The plan.
Nice.
I see it. No, I can see why you've done it. I mean, after that disappointing United game, I just think that going forward, United are going to have to push on, and I've got no choice but to stick with Rashford. I can't really take him out. I'll give him another. Yeah, you'd hope. But yeah, it's been a pleasure to have you on, Ace Adventura, also known as Moshe. Interesting, the man of many names. I'll have to try and remember the many aliases that people have or seem to have. But thank you for coming on. We need to get through as many callers this evening as possible. I think you're pretty much set for next week. And then Digne and sorry, who was the other one?
Haller.
Yeah, well, Haller is someone that I'm looking at. He obviously got the 2 goals at the weekend. Going forward, I think. I mean, did he have a price rise, or is he due a price rise? I think.
Oh, he actually dropped.
He dropped once, didn't he?
He dropped to 7.4, isn't he?
Yeah.
And now is he rising back up at all? Does anyone know, or is he miles off?
It's just wanting to be a little bit different, not a cookie cutter team. Going to get a couple of differentials, so see how it goes. Really.
Ideal. Sounds good to me. Thank you ever so much, Moshe.
Yeah.
We'll get you on
Cheers,
again, I'm
guys.
sure. Cheers, dude. Thank you.
Cheers, thank you.
Wow. Aguero being my captain for Game Week 4, Jason Stevo. Anurag, Aguero, if you're going to do that transfer, Kane to Aguero, I'm saying it right now. Stevo said it was a good option as well. I think chat can give you their opinion. Aguero is a player that we all know is just capable of scoring massive point hauls. And I think that's a great pick.
Before we get on the next call, let's do a quick tiny bit of admin. As Dereko's just mentioned, can we try and get 100 likes before the stream ends? We're going to be going off air soon, and yeah, if you're enjoying the stream, you clearly are, because so there's a load of you there watching. Just simply hit that like button. That really does show your support for myself and Jason for what we do. And of course, as ever, if you haven't subscribed and you enjoy the content, just simply hit that subscribe button. Should we get Chris Atkins on?
Yeah, sounds good to me. Chris Atkins, you're live on the Monday Night Call-In with Steve and Jason, myself. Are you there?
Yes.
Hi,
Can you hear me?
Chris, yeah, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. Are you new
it's great to be on.
Are you new to the community by any chance?
Yeah, I joined about week 1, so 2 weeks ago.
Oh, right.
Of this season.
And have you recently joined Discord?
Yes, I did. Just yesterday, actually.
Oh, wow. Well, it's a pleasure to have you here. It's you'll find that our Discord community is just ever growing and a massive source of information. So Chris, are you a member of the Cash League?
I'm not.
Are you a member of the Community League?
Yes, I just joined this week.
Awesome. So Chris, have you posted your team in the Rate My Team?
Yeah, I did 20 minutes ago, I believe.
And I just want to say, while I'm looking for your team, look in Discord, and there's a channel called the Elite Elimination League, which starts in Game Week 5. Get yourself registered for that, because that's going to be a lot of fun as well. It's going to be a lot of fun.
I will.
And also for the guys in chat as well that aren't a part of the Cash League or are looking to join our Elimination League, it's from Game Week 5. We'll be doing an elimination round. It's going to be a lot of fun. Let's talk about your team. 60 points, well above the average score, more than what I got as well. Again, there's a common pattern. The defense, we won't even look at the. I mean, it's Pope, Digne, Van Dijk, Robertson, all returning you two and ones, or 2 points other than Digne with a 1.
Look at this.
But then we got an interesting pick.
Yeah.
Almiron.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, I wasn't even thinking that. I
thought you were
Almiron,
going to mention
I'm
Madison.
thinking-
I thought you were going to mention Madison.
Yeah.
Captain Madison. Yeah. Talk me through your thought process. You had Sterling and Salah in your team, but you felt the need, or you felt necessary to captain Madison for game week 3.
Yeah.
Why was that?
I mean, it didn't turn out that bad, but my thought process was Sterling plays Bournemouth, and I'm a Bournemouth fan, so I didn't really want to do that. So then I went to Salah. He has a good record against Arsenal, but Arsenal were playing
You're not
2
block
wins on the
FPL
spin.
by any chance, are you?
No.
No, we just, because I detect an accent. I think you're across the Atlantic. Am I right?
You are correct.
And we have got another friend of the show that's from the States, and he's a Bournemouth fan, and he had 3 Bournemouth game week 1. Anyway, I digress. So carry on. Sorry. So you didn't want to go with Sterling because it was against your team, Bournemouth. Why not Salah?
Yeah. I don't know. Arsenal, they had David Luiz. The first 2 games they looked pretty good. The first game they looked good. Burnley's a tough team, so they did well to get past them. And then I don't know. I just didn't feel too confident. And then I just liked James Maddison in general. And I was like, Sheffield United away, it's not a bad fixture. I was thinking Vardy might score, so I was thinking that Maddison might get an assist, and that paid off, I guess.
Okay.
So,
well, unfortunately you got a return there.
Yeah, I was just hoping for anything.
Well, again, you did get a respectable 60 points this week. I think it's kind of
I
a
was just
bit
hoping for anything.
So going forward, Almiron ? Why?
Yes, big.
Why do you have him in your team?
I don't know. I just liked him, and I liked him last year. I'm
because he was in the MLS, wasn't he? Yeah.
I watched him in the MLS, but I don't even watch the MLS that much. I just know he killed it there. Copa America, he played pretty well against Argentina. I remember watching that game. He scored against Argentina, and I don't know. He looked good in preseason, and I don't know. I thought I put him in because I liked.
He almost
Newcastle's
scored
attack.
against Lloris. It got a shot deflected. It was going to go. It would almost certainly have gone in. He curled a shot into top left-hand corner. It just deflected over. But it's definitely a pick that not many, if anyone, that I've been speaking to in FPL-wise. So, I mean, if your gut says to stick with him, then you may...
No, I won't be sticking with him.
Right.
Yeah, my plan's to get him out next week. Because this week, I've already made my transfer.
Okay.
I've taken Perez out, and I've got John McGinn in.
Oh, okay, John McGinn. Yeah, that's
yeah.
So you chose him over. Did you consider Mason Mount at all, or are you just not convinced that he's going to continue his?
Yeah, I'm more not convinced. I'm not worried about his injury. I'm pretty sure he'll be fine in a few days. But it's mainly the I don't know. I'd have to watch him a few more games.
Okay, yeah. I mean, it was either going to be that or Mason Mount. I think that's the main popular moves from Perez. But yeah, so just going into game week 4, then you're going to pretty much stick with that team, but instead of Perez, you're going to have McGinn. Who are you going to be captaining? Is it going to be Maddison again?
Nick Pope. No, I'm joking. I don't know. I'll probably go. Sterling plays Brighton, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll probably go with that.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea. I think I'll be doing the same as well.
Maybe Almiron. Maybe
yeah.
Newcastle. Hey, they won last week, so hopefully maybe that'll pay off.
Well, yeah.
Maybe I'll be back next week and Almiron will give me like 20 or something.
Maybe they're not the whipping boys that everyone's talking about, but yeah, absolutely. I think I look forward to seeing how your team gets on game week 4. Thank you ever so much, Chris.
Just before you go, Chris, why Bournemouth?
It's a long story, but I don't know. My dad has friends from England, and they're from around the area, and I don't know. It seemed like a good place. I went to the stadium last year. Actually, I flew from Seattle to London. I watched a Spurs game, and then I went to Bournemouth. It was very hard to get tickets, but we got tickets, and it was just a great experience.
And who were Bournemouth playing?
Arsenal. It was November 25th, and they lost 2-1. So.
Oh wow.
Josh came. I don't know. Yeah.
Wow. And were you playing fantasy football then?
Wait, I think you cut out. I can't.
Were you playing fantasy football
then? And did you have any players in that game?
No, I was not. Oh, I actually had a team, but it was a dead team because I had a bad week 1, and then I discontinued.
All right.
Yeah.
So this is your first season playing properly?
Yeah, I'm playing properly the whole year this year.
And how well are you doing so far? What's your overall rank?
I'm ranked overall 332,001.
Okay, that's good. That's good.
So
to start with.
It's not too. It's not too.
It's
bad.
a respectable rank. No, it's fine. It's for game week 3. That's fine. I won't be worried about that.
Yeah. It's been going up every week.
As long as you're in the top million, you'll be all right.
All right. Yeah.
But thank you ever so much, Chris, for coming on and speaking to us for the first time. I look forward to speaking to you again. It's great to hear a perspective from yourself, especially from the United States. You probably get a lot more games. Well, you do get a lot more games to watch over there than we do over here.
It's
so
fantastic.
You've got more chance of watching the players than we do. How crazy is that? But it's true. And we look forward to we do look forward to having you on again.
For sure. I'm glad to be on. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Chris. Take care, buddy. Cheers, buddy. Wow. A great flow of people wanting to come in. We've got Elite Guna in the waiting room. We'll bring him in a second. Steve-O, I think we just want to say, guys, thank you ever so much for the views tonight and for the support with the likes. We just said, can we try and get to 100 likes? If you're tuning in for the first time, you haven't hit that subscribe button, please hit that subscribe button. It really, really helps support our show and get us, pretty much lights us up on YouTube for people to find out about our channel. If you're enjoying coming in on, if you're enjoying the call-ins, get yourself joined on our Discord channel by using the > Discord command in the chat. Sorry, I'm trying to do 3 things at once. That's why I'm having to think. Let's bring in. Let's have a look. Have we spoke to Hazard before? Hazard.
No.
Hazard 2000. Can you hear us? He's got his microphone muted and his speakers muted, but I'm going to give him a chance to unmute them. Hello, Hazard. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. Another first-time caller on the show. I've seen you in Discord earlier today. How long have you been a part of our Discord, by any chance?
Oh, I just joined yesterday.
You joined yesterday, okay. And how long have you been watching the show?
Probably about a week.
Oh wow! So another person that's not been watching for very long. And are you enjoying the call-ins?
Yeah, it's good. Yeah.
Cool. So Hazard, very quickly then, your team for game week 3. I've got it up here now. You got 50 points. You played your wild card. How are you feeling?
It's all right, but I felt I could have done better.
Why, if you mind me asking, why did you captain Pulisic?
Probably because I support Chelsea.
Has he done anything this season that makes you think that he's on the cusp of getting goals or assists? Because to me, watching the highlights and obviously the Chelsea games, he just doesn't look. I mean, with the likes of Mason Mount stealing the show. I mean, Ross Barkley completely just being a flash in the pan, it seemed, game week 1 and pre-season. Are you as a Chelsea supporter, you say? I mean, you've got Abraham in there. Do you think you may have one too many or two too many Chelsea assets in that team?
Probably, yeah. I think the only reason I got Pulisic is because the way he played in pre-season.
Yes. Again, it's pre-seasons. Yeah. I understand what you've done. It. Barkley played really well in pre-season as well. We were talking at Barkley as well, doing the preview in game week 1. We were saying that we're looking forward to seeing him, but he's kind of gone missing, isn't he, at the moment in the Lampard team? But Mason Mount is someone that we're talking highly of. Are you excited for Mason Mount as a Chelsea fan?
Well, yeah, he's pretty good, but I don't know. I don't even know.
So, okay. You've got Glenn Murray in your team. you've got some pretty risky players in your team, I would say. You've got some I would say that wild card hasn't paid off.
No, it hasn't.
So what's the plan?
I've transferred Murray out for Wesley, and I've put Neves on the bench this week because he's playing away to Everton.
So you're playing Coleman. You've got Walker on the bench as well there, I see. So you're going to be... So Neves is surely going to be a bench. You're going to be playing Barnes. You're going to be playing Walker. You're going to be playing Coleman, I assume, over Murray. Well, who did you transfer, sorry?
So I've taken Murray out and I've brought in Wesley.
Oh, okay. You're gone with Wesley. Okay. I think you've got a few headaches there now. You've got so many. You're gonna have who do I bench problems, I think, in that team. Who have you currently got on the bench for game week 4, if you don't mind me asking?
Yes, I'm gonna bench Pope, Neves, Barnes, and who is the other one? Wait, who's in my starting lineup again?
Steve-O?
I can't remember who else at the bench.
Well, at the end of the day, you know, your team is extremely strong and there's a lot of players in there. I mean, you could be mix and matching all day with this particular team. You've clearly got a plan and everything. And yeah, I think Jason...
I don't know. Have you got a plan? Because to me, this looks like a team that doesn't have a plan. This looks to me like a team that's just getting in as many sort of mid-tier players that can fill in slots. Because, like, really, with your bench, you're going to be relying on mainly one person to come on. And you've got so much money invested in your bench that you're sacrificing it in your main team. I mean, the defense... Yeah. I mean... It is a pretty lackluster team. I'm going to be honest with you. You've got a lot of fires. Well, in terms of fires, I mean, there's the Pulisic I wouldn't go with. I wouldn't be playing Neves over Coleman or Walker or Barnes. I wouldn't have Barnes as my third sub. Honestly, I think Barnes is going to have to be in your starting 11. I certainly think Walker deserves a place in that starting team. I think that this team needs sorting out. I think you need to get someone in like Lundstrom, get someone in like Cantwell for your bench, and not have so much money invested there on your bench, and to start doing transfers over the weeks. You're probably gonna have to take -4s. And someone mentioned even doing a free hit. I don't think you should be doing a free hit, but I think Murray out for definite. Maybe bring in
Yeah, I've made the transfer with Wesley and.
Sorry, Wesley. You've done the Wesley transfer. But the point being, now you've done that Wesley transfer, I assume you're going to be playing Wesley, right?
Yeah, and I realised the other sub I had is Luke Shaw because he's injured.
So who is going to be on the bench? Sorry, so you have Luke Shaw on the bench.
Pope, Barnes, and Neves.
Oh, you're going to be having to bench Barnes.
Yeah, he's playing Liverpool. Well,
but Liverpool are leaking goals because they've got a very subpar goalkeeper that likes to pass the ball to the opposing team. I just think that stick with what you've got. You've got no choice but to stick with it. The Murray switch to Wesley is a logical move. I can see we've done that, but just look at trying to reinvest your money back into your team for your subs bench. I would have actually said use your wild card now. And sort your team out now to have almost a cheapy bench with the money. How much is your team value, by the way? Can I ask how much your team value is?
It's 100.1.
Right, so you haven't really got much team value in that team. You're just going to have to stick with it, my friend, and try not to take any hits. If you start taking hits now, then it's going to really hurt you, hurt your rank. Are you taking part in mini leagues? Are you in the community league?
Yeah, I'm in the community and the...
Yeah, so are you any friends mini leagues or anything like that? Because obviously, just wanted to kind of gauge how you play the game, really, whether you play the game. Because you mentioned you're a Chelsea fan. I would be willing to bet if you weren't a Chelsea fan, you probably wouldn't have Abraham, Pulisic, and Emerson in your team. Because I certainly wouldn't. Because I'm I'm gonna wait and see when it comes to Chelsea. I said game week 1 I was going to wait and see on them. I'm quite impressed with Abraham. I'm not convinced overly with Pulisic just yet, but I know he's a promising talent, but he's not done anything for me at Chelsea yet.
I was going to captain Abraham last week. I don't know. I just thought Pulisic would do good against Norwich, but
yeah,
wrong.
Well, it's part and parcel of learning curve. I think that yes, you've got no choice but to stick with it and make awkward decisions on who you're going to bench. That's going to be you just be prepared to be very disappointed. Like this week, you've got Barnes with 7. Just be very prepared that you're going to have points on your bench that you're not going to see.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you sound like you know that. I'm probably just telling you something that you already know. So just keep your head up and you've done the transfer to Wesley. It's not a bad team. It's not a bad team. I'm not saying it's a bad. Please don't think I'm ripping your team apart. I'm just trying to say that you can optimize your money's 101 million, or sorry, 100.1 million. You've got to make the most out of that money, and by having all that money on the bench as well, it's eating away at that funds, and your defensive line is pretty weak, isn't it?
Yeah, I just don't understand why Neves didn't take the penalty against Burnley. Because I saw he normally takes penalties.
Well, him and Jimenez take. They kind of alternate. Well, it depends. But yeah,
because he hasn't even scored yet. That's probably why. Well, just get his first goal or something.
Well,
he never scored against United.
Well, either way, I mean, Steve will probably say that he shouldn't have gone into 98 minutes in stoppage time. They shouldn't have had a penalty anyway. But point being is, please come on again. Game week 4. Talk us through how your team went on, and we'll see where we go. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
No. Thank you for coming on, because at the end, this is good, because we're seeing a completely different sort of not a template, but a different setup at the moment. I'm not used to seeing teams like this that have got money just thrown everywhere, and it's just different. And I couldn't do it myself, because I wouldn't want to put myself through the torture of having to put Walker and Barnes and Coleman on my bench with Pope as well. I mean, fortunately they've not punished you other than Barnes. But is this your first season playing by any chance?
No, it's not. No, I play pretty much every season.
Oh, right, okay. So do you normally have like a fully kitted out bench that you just alternate each week? Then is that how you play?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, and if you don't mind me asking, how did that do for you last season? Did that seem to work out for you?
I mean, I normally finish like probably around the million mark. It's not that good, but it's just terrible, pretty much.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, it's all about getting the most out of your team. So you're in the Discord now. Speak to the guys in Discord. I'm sure they'll be more than happy to help you out with your team, and just gain information, because that's what me and Steve-O do. We ask for opinions from other people because we get ideas and information, and that's what it's all about.
I say it's probably because of the bench boost as well. I want to have good players on the bench, even though you use it once a season. But
when were you planning to use your bench boost?
Probably when they've all got decent fixtures.
Double game week.
Yeah.
Second half of the season, double game week. Find a good game week where the teams are playing twice, with the players that are going to be nailed. Going forward.
What triple captain?
Well, there's normally more than one double game week. But ultimately, going forward, let's just see how you get on. Thank you ever so much for coming on, Hazza. I appreciate your time, and yeah, interesting team. It's I'm not being negative, but it's just a different way of playing that I would play. Cheers, Hazza. Thank you ever so much.
Yeah, see you, bye.
Cheers. Well, just like I said, it's a different team and it's a different way of playing fantasy football to the way I play it, and I'm sure it's just different to how you play fantasy football. And like, I couldn't live with myself having Barnes as third sub and having the headache of having to choose between which goalkeeper to play between Pope and Pickford. I'd much rather have just a fodder on the bench I'm not thinking about, that's never going to score any points because they're second, like Button, for example. But it's just a different way of playing the game. And I hope that if he wants to glean advice from the people in the Elite FPL community, I'm sure you guys in the community will help him. Let's move on to the next caller.
Yeah, let's make it the final one. I've lost the will to live. Let's bring on Fire Tog.
Well, there you go. We'll have two then. George Jones is in first. George Jones, Monday night call-in. You're live. How you doing, George?
Hello. How you doing, boys?
Yeah, not too bad. Steve-O's going to take it away because my throat's dry.
Well, we had that. I think we had the last call on for about 2.5 hours. So, simply put, George. How are you feeling ahead of game week 4?
Not too bad. Obviously, wildcarded last week. Just debating whether to keep Ryan in, really.
Yeah, I mean, have you got any off the top of your head right now? Any thoughts on captaincy? We got quite some decent picks in Salah versus Burnley, Sterling versus Brighton, Pookie up against. I forget who's up against now, but what are your thoughts on those 3 particular candidates?
Probably going to stick with Sterling again, to be honest.
You're confident with his tweet that he sent out that he'll try and get a hat-trick this week?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Did you see that, Jason?
What's that? Sorry.
Raheem Sterling replying to official FPL Twitter account about the fact that he's sick to death of him being bombarded with people commenting about him not getting a hat-trick, so he's going to try and get one this weekend.
No, Raheem Sterling, yeah, I saw this. He was talking about people, like you said, having him in his FPL team, and he was replying to people on FPL. I think he even replied to Andy. Let's talk FPL, Andy. It's just... Yeah, it was crazy because normally they.
We'll get him live on air on here then.
maybe we can see if we can get Raheem Sterling on. That would be something, wouldn't it? That would be a whole new game changer. But who knows? Maybe one day.
Invited Pookie onto the show. He's declined my offer. We're trying to.
We need to find someone close to the Norwich City camp that we can get in touch with Pookie, because you know what? It's crazy things have happened. You never know. We could probably do something. No. Anyway, let's talk about this team in front of us. George, 54 points with your wild card played. Are you happy with that score?
Except from the 3 of your United boys, yeah.
Were you one of the people, George, that were listening to my advice to bring in United players ahead of the Palace game? I thought that Rashford and Martial and Wan-Bissaka were sure to return you high points, or was that just your specific thought process there? You're not blaming me, are you, George?
No, well, originally I had 5 in midfield and Pookie up front in his own, but then I brought in Barnes and Rashford in last minute, thinking that United would get an easy win against Palace at home.
Oh, I thought that as well.
And it didn't happen.
Well, it's just unfortunate. I mean, Rashford could, in most chances, that Rashford's a great penalty taker. So unlucky. Hit the inside. Yeah. It's not very often you see a ball hit the inside of the post, roll along the goal line, and then go out for a blooming goal kick. That's very, very, very unlucky. Very unlucky. And it's just one of those. Unfortunately. Fortunately, he didn't get any minus points. That could have been worse. Could have got a yellow card.
Yeah,
and they would have had a -1. But no, I think that's a sensible, solid team going forward. Stick with the United players. Don't get them out. Are you going to be? Well, I'll say Cantwell. Are you going to be playing Cantwell next week, or you can't really drop anyone for him, can you?
No, and I'm backing West Ham to beat Norwich as well. So.
Oh, there you go.
I think I'll keep him on the bench.
Yeah, keep him on the bench. Not a bad idea there. You got Lundstrom as well. Yeah, I think that's a pretty solid team. Save your transfer for the international break. That's what I'd say.
Yeah, cheers.
No, thank you for coming on. Thank you, George.
Thanks.
Yeah, well done, buddy. Cheers now. Final one, Firetog. Let's bring him on. Firetog is currently muted and deafened in Discord. Please, can you unmute yourself and deafen yourself? You'll be the final caller. Firetog, how are you doing this evening? Thank you for your patience. Are you there? Firetog, are you there?
No, may as well make it King Tyster then.
King Tyster, you've been dragged in on the on-air channel. You're live on the Monday Night Call-In. Are you there? King Tyster. King, are you there? He's watching the stream. Okay, I think we're just gonna call it. We'll just call it here, guys. Guys, you were always awesome. Thank you ever so much. We had a couple of funny moments in the stream where I literally just got spooked by Daddy Longlegs, also known as a crane fly. It literally snuck up on me and I jumped out of my seat. I'm sure someone probably clipped that. And also I thought Tunisia was in Eastern Europe. So that was also another highlight. Thank you ever so much for joining us, guys, for this monster of a stream. It's been 2 hours. It was only meant to be 1 hour. It always seems to just fly by. We look forward to having callers that didn't get on air tonight. We'll get you on air. We'll try our best to get you on air next time. We'll be doing a preview show Thursday night at 8:30. This Thursday at 8:30 British Standard Time, or British Summer Time. Steve-O, go ahead with the admin.
And just to quickly add to that, I'll probably be doing a stream on Wednesday morning. So Wednesday morning for our continental friends, I'll probably be doing one at approximately 7-8 o'clock in the morning. So just a bit of a heads up there for you this particular game week. So yeah, as per normal, if you've enjoyed the stream, then just simply hit that like button. That will just show your support for myself and Jason for what we and the Elite FPL community are
You're going
doing.
off the camera. Come on, move yourself down a little bit. There we go. We can see you now.
And then, of course, if you do enjoy what we do and you haven't subscribed, just simply hit that subscribe button. We are pretty much a daily content creator to talk all things fantasy football. So yeah, try and join in on the fun regarding the Discord. The description is in the link is in the description. Plus, I'm sure FPL Boona and Daily Llama, and of course FPL Boona, you've been an absolute star in the moderating the chat tonight.
Apparently, Daily Llama's going on holiday. Apparently, Daily Llama's going on holiday for a week. So have a great holiday, dude. All the best.
Wow, yeah, absolutely. Have a really nice time, basically, and don't look at FPL so I can catch you. But no, but in all seriousness, it's been a wonderful couple of hours, and we will see you. Yeah, like Jason, well, like I said on Wednesday, and the pair of us will be on Thursday. And also, just a bit of an exclusive for people watching us, we've got a special day planned, keyword being day, planned on Saturday. So that'll be all fun and games as well. So yeah, it's going to be a big week in the world of Elite FPL for you guys. Oh, and also, of course, follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Elite FPL. Both of their formats we're active on. Former co-host Dan is now in charge of the Instagram, and yeah, me and Jason basically do all the Twitter, but it doesn't really matter. Just follow us on those two platforms when we next go on air. Other than that, cheers very much, everybody, for joining us.
Subscribe, like, and hit the notification bell, guys. Take care. Bye.
Just of interest, whereabouts are you? Not in the world, but are you near like an industrial machine or something? It's very 2 seconds. Just ask a couple of questions. I just need to get the door for a second.
No
Sorry.
problem,
This is what happens when you're live.
What's going on? Not really. I'm waiting to go to gym. What about yourself?
Live on YouTube doing a stream.
Why do you feel that you're constantly changing your team, mate? Is it just there's just so many ideas?
So many ideas, so many different perspectives. I blame Brett Mollison for his 5 at back, because when you see my new team,
wow.
Brighton home, they couldn't buy a goal in the last season.
Well, I don't know. Dan's got Glenn Murray. I think he'll have a word to say about that.
I'm detecting possibly a German accent. I'm probably completely way out. But where are you calling us from?
South Africa.
On the first day, I literally just typed in FPL, like first draft, and yours came up like first. So I thought, oh, well, I'll watch one of the live streams when it comes on. And then I thought, this is a bit long, isn't it? About 2 hours in. And then 3 hours later, well, an hour later, I was like, yeah, these seem alright, you know. Steven's not that bad.
I have one question for you. I want you to predict the order of the Elite FPL ranking. So, like, who do you think will finish first, second, and third out of y'all three this season?
So it's certainly, no disrespect to Dan, but it's certainly going to be between me and Jason. And right now, as it stands, I'd go with Jason because my history suggests that I'm going to be having a bad season.
So I've got the 5 at the back. I just see a lot of value there. I feel like if I don't have Salah, I can spread the money elsewhere and maybe get the points another way.
All the teams now, except for obviously Salah and Sterling, these players, a lot of players are going to change towards the start of the season just because of new transfers, injuries that could happen, and all of that. So for me to tell you now, like personally right now, I'd say definitely if Tammy Abraham or Batshuayi are cheap, I'd get one of them just because I don't care about the Man United. We can score against them, at least 2 or 3.
Hey guys, this season we're using Discord. It's a text and voice application where you can talk all things FPL with fellow community members. You can post your team in the Rate My Team, talk in the general chat, you can look at transfer news, look at awesome GIFs, sign up for our Cash Mini League, look at our previous podcasts, and even join us live on air in one of our streams. We look forward to seeing you guys. Link is in the description, or look at the code on screen.